Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on the 10th of December with our guest, Honorable Ruth Nvumetta Kavuma, who has had many people go through her hands as teacher, as head teacher, and then went on to serve in Parliament and to do so many things to progress education, life for girls and women in the country, and now is enjoying a life of retirement, I believe, but a working retirement. I think we've had a previous guest describe retirement as a change from the stressful life into something less stressful. So yes, she's enjoying retirement, but she's actually doing something. So thank you very much. We'll go right in. Mrs. Kavuma, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Sophie.
So we have a few people joining in from different walks of life, people who know about this event. It's a monthly event, and those who don't know about it. So for those who are joining us for the first time, you're welcome. This is our monthly event that we host, and we invite people who are either our parents, our elders, or anyone who has made an impact on us or an impact on other people. And we invite them to share their wisdoms, to tell us a bit about their journey. We can't say they'll tell us a lot about their journey. It's really a small part of that journey of life, with the view and the intention that we learn something, we take something, even if it be one thing, we take something that we can hold on to in our own journey that will make that journey smoother, better, and even more efficient, or even just to have a good laugh and know that you're in company, that you're having experiences that someone has had before, so you don't feel so lonely in those experiences, even if you don't see anyone in that current moment who's sharing the same highs and lows as you are. So knowing that someone has gone through it, or even planning and preparing. So it's a monthly one, and this month we have our she was personally our headmistress, our year in 1991, and I think that's the year you took on as the first year as headmistress. So again, hopefully we carry some memories for you as well as having been your first intake. But even if it's nothing, that you have actually played an important role in our life. So anyone who's interested, will send more details on how to get onto our mailing lists for further guests and sessions. So Mrs. Kavuma, would like to ask you, it's really an informal chat. Yes, we have shared some questions of what we think we'll talk about, but really it's for us to have a conversation. Think about it. Okay, today it's quite cold in Kalangala, as you said, and so you're sitting inside, but think about it that we're sitting in front of you and you're maybe sipping some tea or coffee and you're talking to us. It's nothing that is formal. There are no right or wrong answers. It's really just hopefully heart to heart. We're at your feet. You talk to us. So we'll go right in, and you're free to jump in and say no. Let's also talk about this and this because it's really important. So if we could start by telling us about your childhood. What was it like, and how did it influence the woman you became?
Thank you very much, Sophie. Thank you, everybody. I always told people I'm always very nervous and shy. A few of you believe it, a few of you don't, but I'm a very shy person. So as we start, I would like to say a word of prayer. Father, Lord, we thank you. I thank you for this opportunity you have given me to speak to so many people. And I pray that a message will be communicated to all of us as we learn from each other. Thank you. Amen. Now, I come from Sese Islands. I hope I'm clear. Am I clear?
Yes, very clear.
Okay. I come from Sese Islands. I was actually born in Lubaga Hospital, at Lubaga Hospital. You notice this as we go along. And, but my origin, Sese Islands, Bokassa Island in particular, from a big family, the Kaganda family. So I had a big family childhood, if I may call it that. And I was born, Sophie, you told me something that touched me. I was born a sick child because I had a hole in my heart. So my parents really were puzzled because they were told, if I get over it at 7, maybe I'll outgrow it. If I don't get to 7 years, I won't get to 7 years, that kind of thing. But they were very courageous parents. My mother was a nurse. My father was in, should I call it, politics, administration, and that kind of thing. So, but they were very courageous parents because they carried the burden which they had been given. So I kept on falling sick. And at one point, I think they felt maybe I was also because I'm sick. So then they took me to my auntie's place. It was Senga Wange to stay there. She was married in Chagwe, in places called Nabsugwe. For me to grow up there, I think at that time I was about 2 something. And of course, she and her husband spent most of the time carrying me to hospital, up and down, taking me in and out of hospital because I was fairly weak. Then I started sort of outgrowing being sick, because even when I asked them what was my problem, they say, you are always sick. And so then they took me to, they wanted me to join Gayaza then, a little earlier, but because I had that background, the headmistress said, no, give her another year before she can join. That is Gayaza Junior School. Then at that time, they took me to a reverend's place who was my father's friend, who had worked in Sese Islands with my father. My father had been Sasa chief in Sese Islands. So they had worked together, and that's where we come from anyway. And he took me there for a year to grow up. That's where I got baptized. That's where families, Reverend Sewa Good Day, of course, they've already gone. And they had a daughter called Ruth who lives in England at the moment, and they gave me the name Ruth. And I had fun because I wasn't at home, and the Sewa Good Day family were taking me special also because I was coming from this Saza Chief's family and their friend. So they took me special. Then I went to Gayaza Junior School. I don't think I felt sick that much at the junior school. That's probably what I needed. But of course, the school had my history. So they always cared. They always looked out to see what was happening to me. I think the most difficult time I had in my education career was P1, P2, and P3. Now, I was born left-handed, but because of the culture then, they had to make sure that I was right-handed. Now, P1, P2, P3 at that time was learning to write. So learning to write was so difficult for me. It was the most difficult subject, and some people who know my handwriting will realize that it was a very difficult subject for me. And I used to try and catch up, but I was always the last one. And in most cases, they would promote me to letter F simply because, really everybody has gone on to the other 3 letters of the alphabet. And I'm still out here trying to struggle to write it properly. So reading and writing were not my best. And yet I had to learn. So I think I had that handicap. And fortunately, when I got to P3, there was a certain teacher. Her name was Miss Lutaya. My family, we are Lutaya family. So where Miss Rutaya, because of that, of course, that connection, this is Miss Rutaya, and I used to pose to the others, hey, Miss Rutaya is our teacher. And she had been to Canada. They used to have that exchange. And I think she probably had learned, something to do with children who are not, moving at a speed as others. And that meant that we developed a relationship, and she encouraged me a lot. Then when I got to P4, and then in P3, because I was encouraged, I had sort of love and that kind of thing, I started performing relatively well. Now, when we go to P4, we started doing, people call it numbers, I think these days, in the morning. And it was basically numbers, arithmetic. And then, of course, my potential then came out very, very clear that I will not write, but I will add. Because all the numbers just came like that, And as all of you may have noticed, we as teachers, well, I think of mathematics probably, have a weakness of liking the people who do maths well. They become our friends. So then the teachers started feeling me because I was, flying. As catastrophe would be. And then we were staying in Mitiana. I came from, at that point, what I would call perfect family. My father, our father used to pick us. I was actually, what I didn't tell you, because of my health, my father felt that I should go to Gayaza so I don't have to fight the boys. And my other sisters went to Budo because his life, because he was a Budonian, his life was Budo, Gayaza, nothing else. He did not think there was any other life anywhere else. So my sisters went to Budo, I went to Gayaza. I had another elder sister who went to Gayaza earlier than me, and also had childhood. I think she had been born premature, and so I think she was delicate. So my father felt Gayaza was for delicate, and Budo was for those who can fight their ways through. And probably he was right. And life was good. He used to pick us in a Mercedes Benz to go for the holidays, and then Maurice would pick our luggage. Then we would wait at the coffee shop, at the bookshop. There was a coffee shop, have breakfast before we go to Mitiana. Life was really cool. P4 comes. That is 1966. In P4, there was the attack at Rubiri. My father was a very, 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 very close friend of Mutesa the second, the Kabaka then, Sekabaka now. So my father was a very close friend of Sekabaka Mutesa. They used to go hunting and whatever together. They were very close friends. They had been to Budo together, so they were really close. The attack on really closed a door completely, because my father was arrested and he was put in prison. And, I didn't know what to do. We all didn't know what to do, but I must say the Gayaza teachers were so, so good. They prayed for us. They protected us, because they also thought, because we had other children who were in the same situation, parents dead, parents, connected in that line. So we had those, and they all kept us together. They really made sure that we were always well looked after, comforted, but it wasn't the same. Now it came to going back for the holidays, and there's almost nobody picking you, because, the one who used to pick you is not there. The others have their own responsibilities. And it was difficult. I'll tell you this now, because I think that is also the time when I had to get help for school fees. Because, I mean, there was no money. There was, they could not look after us. It's quite, we are a big family. So relatives also had their level. And I remember one time when I had to go with my auntie, my Senga, to go to Luzira to see my father, who was in maximum, whatever that one is called. But then I was with you. We had to go to get permission from Parliament. That's where the office, CID office was. And the CID officer said, no, the child is not going. But as I think about it, they probably wanted to protect me from seeing my father in that situation. I don't know. So I remained behind at Parliament under a big tree, crying. My auntie went, saw him and whatever, managed to get some, I think, signature for some fees. And then, you know, we came back. And I moved on, fortunately, still doing very well in maths, English, and others. Yes, with a struggle. I mean, when you have a background like Gayaza Junior School, you can't say you will fail because, you know, there was so much for us to be able to not to fail. So I think that's how I managed to pass, because teachers used to care. We had games, we had everything, but don't forget, there was that background of the heart problem. So I was sometimes could not be allowed to participate in certain things because they thought, oh, what if? Then of course I'll go to hospital, they'll give us AIDS, this is the naughty part. They would admit me for some time, give us eggs and other nice things. I didn't like them. I would throw them out of the window, the sick bay window, the junior school sick bay window. And then the nurse would find it. We had one we called the big nurse and the small nurse. Bambi, the small nurse, would come and say, why did you do it? I didn't like that, the eggs. I mean, that was being a child. And then of course I passed, not with flying colors, but I continued. There was a break at one point, I think in P7, my father was partly released. Yes, in P7, my father was partly released. But the naughtiness in him and the love he had for his friend, Kabaka, unfortunately, he then passed on. When he passed on, when the Kabaka were kissed on Omokono, my father had to go for burial and confirmation of whether this has really happened. So he went back door through Kenya and flew out, got to England. And then, of course, he came back and everybody was saying, Lutaya, tell us, Dara Mutesa Taliyo, and he had to say the bitter truth. And of course, they didn't believe him. They were saying, Alutaya, but they've played this, it can't be true. I mean, Tengatichisoboka. So then they took him back. I mean, who was he trying to do that? And they actually picked him from Sese Islands when he had gone. I had a time when I was not spending holidays with my nucleus family, but basically with my aunties. And most of the time, that's where I was. So even at that time, when he was when he went to Bokassa after coming back from England, he was picked. I wasn't there, but a good number of the family members were there and they witnessed it and they came for him in a helicopter. And it is taking their dear one. But then that is what it was. So of course I went through, in senior one, there was an application because then he was still in prison. So in senior one, there was an application to Amnesty International. Amnesty International paid some fees for me. I think it was over £7, and that was a lot of money. So I got that. So every time, of course, I think back that I was also helped at one point. That's what makes me, feel I need to help. A good number of people have asked me. That's why I'm a Rotarian, I think. And a good number of people said, but you put in so much, your effort and whatever. But I think it's probably because I know at one point I was helped. So there's somebody else who also needs help. And the help doesn't have to be financial. I mean, my aunties gave me somewhere to stay and save when my father was in prison. So even just somewhere to stay or feed somebody, give them a meal was very important. Or even direct me and I mean, that was still, yes, it was still necessary. So then, of course, he was released and life did not stay the same, but we still continued. My mother was a nurse, and because of the hiccup in '66, she had to go back and work. That was very fortunate. So education is very important. She had to go back and work, but she could not look after all of us. And we used to go and spend some holidays with her. Very strict lady. If I didn't have these two parents, I don't know, and didn't go to Gayaza, I'm not sure how far I would have gone with my life, because my father was strict, and most especially on time and, cleanliness. My mother made sure that I did the right thing at school. So if a report came and she's talkative, oh God, she would be over the roof. She wouldn't beat me, of course, but she would be so, how? Why do you waste time talking? Get yourself to the books instead of talking. What led me, I think, at the point which I didn't tell you, when my father took me to Gayaza Junior School, primary one, he actually told, and this is the topic, sort of what I'm talking about. He told the teachers and my auntie and my mom when they took me, he said, I think this girl is going to be a teacher. That was his level. That was a prophecy. He felt I'll be a teacher at that point. And he also prophesied my going back to Gayaza to teach. At that point, that was the Gayaza Junior. When it comes to Gayaza High School, that is another story. I mean, he still prophesied over Gayaza. People, what we say about our children, we need to think. We need to think seriously and come round. So anyway, then Gayaza High School was Gayaza High School, fun, full of fun. We worked hard at our books, but we also had a lot of fun because there were games. I was talking to a friend last 2 nights ago, and they said, you remember when we were doing our maths homework, and we would be singing in class while doing our maths homework. And she also was a maths person. So, we had very good teachers, and we enjoyed, Gayaza High School because of the diversity in what we could do. At the center of it, of course, being able to go to chapel for services. And as people, I mean, we felt it was a lot on us. Why should we? But we went. And there are so many times when I sit down and say, much as I grumbled, going to chapel, maybe what I know now, what has shaped me, what has seen me through life, is because I did listen in. Some few words did not go through one ear through another. They stuck in the middle of the ears, which is probably the brain. So I think that was, yeah. Then I went to Makerere. leaving out quite a lot of the high school. I think it was, you asked me about it, if there is anything you think I have left out. Then I went to Makerere. At Makerere, no, I hadn't, after senior 6, I had been offered a place in Dar es Salaam to do engineering. And remember, at Gayaza, I studied PCM, and at that time, I'm going to do engineering. Deep down me. And yet during the holidays, I would collect all the girls, all the children in the village, and and I'd say, I'm the teacher. Okay, you remember those games you play, Kucharo. That's what I would do. But I still said, I'm going to be an engineer. PFPCA, no, teaching, no. Then I was offered engineering at Dar es Salaam University, and my dad then, of course, was out of prison. And he said, Omwana getagende yomuabo, Moabo is like, I don't even understand that. It's not like going to England. I'm sure if he had been told I was going to England, he would say, hey, very fast, you go. But Moabo, but Tanzania, no. And so then I had to come back and apply at Makerere, and I was given PCM. And I think with education, I didn't really like chemistry. I felt it was hard. I really felt it was very, very hard. Maybe because it had a little bit more reading and understanding than reading, more than physics and maths, that had a little more calculation than remembering these things. So I walked out of the chemistry class at Makerere and said, no, I'm not going to do chemistry. So I walked out and went to psychology, to the psychology class. And they registered me. At the end of the year, I was being sent out. They said, you never attended any chemistry lessons, you never attended any education lessons, you are not doing exams, we are not giving you a card to do exams. So of course, fortunately, I went to psychology. I told them, I've been attending psychology, and I showed evidence that I had enough points to be able to continue, to do my exams and continue. And then I dropped psychology after first year. I dropped maths after second year, and I finished off with physics. And then I said, okay, then during those days, they used to come to us to ask us to go and work wherever we are. So Uganda Post came to us in the physics department. Of course, I was, at that time, I was the only girl doing physics with all my boyfriends, and all my boyfriends really liked me. They were like, we are having a discussion group. Let her come to our group. They sort of were very encouraging boys. And I went and did an interview with Posts, and they said, okay, there's going to be a training. I said, training. Went there, and it wasn't very interesting. So immediately I went back to do postgraduate diploma in education. What goes comes around in most cases. So I went to do postgraduate diploma in education. At that time, I was already married. I had Barbara, and Barbara had her first education at university because, one, she was a classmate to a physics group of boys when she was in my stomach. Secondly, all the people I was staying with at Mary Stewart, most of them looked after her, because sometimes I would come with her and leave her in the room or with one of them, so I can go for my lectures, come back, and then, pick her to go home. So any of you who know Barbara, my firstborn, she really had fun, I think, being a classmate. And when I meet my classmates, they say, is this one my classmate? I tell them, yeah, that one is your classmate, because she was in my stomach when I was studying with the boys. Yeah, then after my postgraduate diploma, I got no, during teaching practice, I taught at Chibuli. There are many I remember in Chibuli. Many boys, naughty boys. I can see they are big men, but so I say very little about it. And I was there for 6 months for teaching practice, and of course then train came, and I went to posting. When we were posted, I was posted to Gayaza. Gayaza was a bit difficult because they didn't have many married people. So they didn't have room for married people to stay. There was no room for them. So it was quite tough, and they were not sure whether they should take me, but then at the same time, they didn't have a physics maths teacher. It was that kind of, they didn't have enough teachers for the science. So it was a bit of struggle for us, for me to get there, to get into Gayaza, but I did. Should I stop there? Sophie?
Sorry, I'd forgotten that I'd muted. So yes, my goodness, what a bit to unpack. I think I've taken a few notes here, and one of the things I'd like to comment on is something that you take almost for granted in your story, the fact that you went from house to house, not necessarily in a bad way, but from home to home with your relatives. Obviously, part of it was due to the circumstance when your father was imprisoned. But even before that, where they took you to the reverends and the Osenga, I think that's a practice that we don't have now. And in reflection, it adds a lot to the character of a child, the character of a person, learning to live with different people, learning to live in different environments and circumstances. And I think that's something that definitely shines through your experience, that the things that you picked up from those different places that you're in. So anyone who's just joined us in the last few minutes, we're talking to Honorable Ruth Nvumetta Kavuma, who was headmistress at Gayaza, and she's talking to us on pearls of wisdom, sharing her story, so we can, with God's help, pick up some lessons that we can take with us on our own journey. But her theme is going to be centered on the parent-child circle. And you've touched on that, where what you say to your child will come back. And so being careful what people say to their children. And I think this is the case, that often parents might not be very careful about what they say. And sometimes what they say is good, sometimes it's not so good. But if it does come back, it doesn't come back in a very good way. So I think you've told us about your childhood, and you described challenges that you had, just even from learning to write, because you were being changed from left hand into right hand, which would have been a challenge in education, but you were able to then find, I think in some of maybe today or yesterday's language, to find your groove in the numbers and maths, which meant you were able to excel in a different way. And you were allowed to excel in that way and not take the apparent handicap of writing to shape your life in a less fulfilling way. So I think that's definitely something that we've picked up. So our participants, anyone who's joined, please do type in the chat any comments. There'll be time at the end for questions and answers. But we'll move on now. If you have any, you can raise your hand later on if you've got some questions. But we'll move on now to, we've talked about your education. And I think whilst we're on education and the journey you were on with a young Barbara in your time at university, and all through the choices that your parents made for you in school, what can you advise us as parents when we're making choices for schools for the children? What advice can you give us when we come to school choices in the Uganda that we have today?
In the Uganda we have today? I think I was lucky, as I said before. My dad's idea was Gayaza and Budo. You know, they had no choice in a way. my parents. Now, you people at the moment have a lot of choice, and it is that choice, I think, that is sort of like making life more difficult, because the more you have to choose from, the more difficult it is for you to choose. And looking at the child, I think we need to look at the child. Why did Barbara, I'm sorry, Barbara, if you are there, but why did Barbara go to Namagunga and not Gayaza? At that time, I had become headmistress of Gayaza. And I realized that all my wrongdoing will go to Barbara in the school, because children are normal. I had gone through school, so I knew what we would call teasing would be, and how the teachers would take her if she wasn't performing. Madam, how can she not perform? You know, the tension I would put on her because of my position. So then we agreed with Sister Kefas then at that time that my daughter should go to Namagunga, and you know, we agreed on that. It is a good school. It's a little far. Who wouldn't, if I went through Gayaza, who wouldn't have wanted my child to also, my girl to also go through, you know, Gayaza? So we agreed, that's how. So it is studying the situation. As we have these children, how do we handle the situation? One of my sons went to Chisubi, the other two went to Budo, and you know, and Chiburi and other schools. And that is basically by looking at what they could do and how they probably would cope in society. And then you also need to listen to them and know. I had experience of so many parents who, the children who came to my office and told me, Mrs. Kavuma, I don't want to be here. It is my parents. Now, to some of them, I said, your parents are right. You need to be here. To some of them, I was courageous enough to call the parents and just tell them, your daughter has said she doesn't want to be here. She's not comfortable. But of course, to some of them, I managed to say, should I call the headmaster of Budo and ask whether they can take your child? And I said, oh, the parent would probably, in most cases, they would be in agreement. And so the child transfers to Budo and excels. The child, you know, transfers to Nabisusa, because we had, of course, our community as head teachers. And they excel, and they are happy being there. But of course, some they could not express it to their parents that, one, they don't want to be in the school, some that they don't want to do the combination that they have been given. I think we need to do a little bit more understanding of our children. And I had a parent, an engineer, and the girl said, I want to do fine art because I want to be a designer. The parent just said, this is impossible. I mean, this is not done. Who are you going to design? Now look at the world now. And the child actually is a designer. But look at the world now. There's a lot of luck in how we guide. We need to pray for our children, but we need to listen to them also, and not listen to their peers. Of course, there's a lot of peer pressure now. We did, but maybe it wasn't at the same pressure, at the same rate. So I think listening to them and getting guidance from older people. We are not too old. we still can give some advice.
Okay, thank you. I think that final remark is often a very important one, because each one of us, as we're going through a stage of life that we're in, we think we are the first ones to go through it. And then anyone older is just too old. They wouldn't understand anything. It was different times. And yet when you go through it later, you realize that actually there was a lot of wisdom to pick from those who are older and had actually experienced this. So listening into what our elders have got to say. Okay, so I've got just picking up a few comments from the chat, and then we'll move on to our next area. So baby and mom at uni with a big thumbs up from Marietta. We should be flexible when kids get pregnant. I think that's going to come up in a little while. And then from Akusa, listen to your children. I think that's very important. And then from Medina, assalamu alaikum to you all. I want to appreciate the lessons of our children sharing homes with other trusted family members and friends. Okay, so, and then we have something here from Rebecca Chigongo. I agree with you, Mrs. Kavuma. Teaching in a school with your child in it would be unfair to her. Mine too went to Namagunga while I still taught in Gayaza. Only my last child went to Gayaza after I had been transferred. Again, it's not considering the situation, study the situation that you talked about. And here someone signed in as Techno Camon. Hi to everyone, Baguma Jackson, VP, RC Kalangala, Sese Island. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, everyone, from wherever you're joining. We have people joining from different parts of the country and parts.
Hi, Jackson. As I said, I'm a Rotarian and a senior Rotarian, so that's why Jackson is there.
Okay, so I think I'll move on to a particular question, something you talked about. I've got Akusa here who would like to ask a question. You talked about you being pregnant at university. Akusa, would you like to put your question forward at this point? Actually,
yes.
Yes, please go on.
I will actually, the question is not mine. I am relaying a question. Hello, everyone. So, Mrs. Kavuma, I don't know if you remember, during our time at Gayaza, there was a schoolmate of ours who fell pregnant while she was in S4. And of course, for us, it was the biggest scandal. We used to go through those pregnancy checks, I remember. And I mean, most of us knew what the result would be, but that was quite a shock to us that one of our year mates, classmates, actually, schoolmates was pregnant at the time. However, to our great shock, you did not expel this girl. You allowed her to continue, but commuting from home. She went back home, but she'd come in every day. She'd sit in the dining room with us. She went through that preparation for Cantab. She wore her uniform, which was very unflattering to a pregnant person because her stomach was very much exposed. And she sat her exams, and my recollection, she did very well. So the question is, Mrs. Kavuma, how did you get away with that in a school like Gayaza at that time?
Yes, Akusa, to tell you the truth, that was a very big challenge. A very, very big challenge. I don't mean that particular case, but I had that. I think the fact that, of course, I was at university did not matter whether I was pregnant or not at that time, because, you know, you would be allowed to. But at that time, I had gotten to know much more about what girls are going through. And most of that was not because they really wanted to go through it. And as a believer, the people who came and said, why doesn't she have an abortion? And I do not believe in that. And I knew, you know, even being pregnant, she would walk through it. And I think I was feeling, if I did it, when my classmates were all boys, and being a relatively difficult subject, she should be able to do it. Of course, we had to go through a lot with the school board, because even at that time, unfortunately, if a teacher got pregnant and they were not married, they would have to go. I remember one of our deputies was pregnant, and she had to go because she had not yet gotten married. And that was quite tough. I mean, the community in Gayaza was very tough. But what everybody was saying, even the others will think that it is okay to be pregnant. Now, if you people are genuine to us, what you felt at that time is what I think you did. You had pity on her. You did not think that you can afford to be pregnant as well. You just looked at her and thought, look at her, look at her. Somehow, sometimes negative, but also feeling, how is she feeling? You know? So I think some of these actions are actions that just God sent through experience, through having known that it is tough to go through some kind of childhood. And they had, of course, explained her situation. And I thought, yeah, let us give it a chance. Then there is another girl, when you say that, there's another girl who had just had a child and was expelled from Mvura, from Arua somewhere. And they said, no, Mvura High School, I think. We are not having a child who had gotten a baby. So she came, and they came with somebody and they said, can you have her? And I said, yes. I mean, if the baby has somebody to look after, then why not? Let her come. I'm actually told she has a PhD and lecturing in law somewhere. I mean, she's a high flyer, but she was given a chance. But sometimes maybe I wouldn't have. And when you talk about that, when I was headmistress in 1998, I think, no, 96, something like that. We, the Makerere University people, university women, led by Dr. Jane Mremwa, they had a concept to start Forum for African Women Education, which was dealing with bridging the gap between girls and boys in education. So I was invited to the meetings and we put this together. And when we wanted to start FAWE properly, the people I was with said, maybe you should be the head because it is about secondary education. Jane has helped us to model this at university level. But basically we were looking at secondary education because remember, we already had a policy on UPE, so we could not intervene that much and more challenges come in at secondary level. So then they encouraged me and I took up the leadership of FAWE. And FAWE, I mean, you see how narrow-minded I am. The only break I got from Gayaza was at university for 4 years. So my head was so narrow-minded, I didn't know enough, though I did that, but I don't think I knew enough about the challenges the girls go through. FAWE opened up so much for me. And I learned so much about the challenges. You know, challenges of, I mean, girls used to come to my office and say, oh, my period. I said, this one is being naughty. To some out, you want to go to see your parents? Yes. Then I would call their parents and their parents would laugh and say, that way you're allowing her because I have had they've had their periods. Some I would of course say no. And some I knew their parents would not appreciate it. So I would say, no, you are staying around. But, you know, the children who would tell you they would not go to school for the week in a month because they're having their periods. I'm a maths teacher. In a week, you've covered a topic and you're not going to go back. So now they come back and they say, girls can't do maths. They are really bad at maths. But they missed a whole topic. What did you expect? You know, some of these examples, some of them would get up and the boys would laugh at them because of their period. So when it comes to science where they have to get up and, you know, do practicals, they would not do it. Because, you know, with my periods, how can I? They become, you know, they get a problem. And it is a fact. It's nature. So I learned a lot and had to do a lot of encouraging. And I really thank God that I managed to be part of FAWE from its foundation, because that also taught me a lot as I was doing my work in Gayaza.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kavuma, for that explanation. And I think that topic is very fundamental now as we deal with the aftermath of COVID and what happened to many children, relatives included. You know, with a lot of downtime, a lot of things happened, and we are facing that. And of course, the church came out with its position about where they thought these girls should go. Schools are the government-owned schools had their own positions, private schools had their own position. But as you say, it was the girl child who was caught in this situation. Nobody is saying anything about the father of the baby or the boy who was responsible. All of this is on the girl and whether or not she gets to continue her education. But thank you very much. And before I hand back to Sophie, I think that was just one of the various things that were quite groundbreaking about yourself. For me personally, I remember coming to you and asking you if we could have boys come for a dance at Gayaza, which was obviously very unheard of at the time. And I remember you said, yes, why not? They can come. But exactly how are you going to deal with this day? You know that, we don't typically have this sort of visitor. You sat down with us, you let us, describe what we wanted to do. And of course, you had very many parameters about how that day was going to happen, but you allowed it to happen, which, was quite different from every other headmistress at the time, allowing us to do that. So I think that was just one of the examples of how you said that you were very narrow-minded, but I disagree. I'd really like to disagree. You were very open about many things. You allowed us to start a magazine. We borrowed money from the school. And I remember you told us, by the way, if you don't pay that money, we are going to get it from your parents. And we were shaking at the thought. But I just wanted to say that, Mrs. Kavuma, in my opinion, I do not think you were narrow-minded at all. You listened to us, you let us get away with many things. Those are just two examples I wanted to speak about before handing over to Sophie.
Thank you. But I also had a very big opportunity, and I really thank God for having been in that position when I was having my own children. So I think I had my children to look at as well, and really felt, yeah, if this is happening to me, to my child, it is happening to so many. Of course, I made so many mistakes, but then, yes, I managed to move on. And that is how I feel. I didn't tell you people that another hiccup I had was when I joined Gayaza as a teacher. After 7 months, my father passed on before he came to see me teaching. I really felt, I've always been feeling good. I think in this area, you were a bit unfair because he should have come and seen me as a teacher, but that was that. And maybe it helped me to move on, because I kept on feeling, yeah, I need to satisfy what my father felt I should do. And when I was becoming headmistress, a good number of people, I wasn't very old when I was a headmistress. You people could have thought that I was old. I was pretty young, and only 35. So a good number of people, the church, the community, the Buganda community and all, they were all feeling I was too young. But then they didn't have an alternative. They kept on looking for an alternative and they couldn't find the alternative, but they still felt I was a bit too young. So 2 incidences. A senior reverend who had children in Gayaza said, no, she is just too young. She cannot manage our children. Deep down I'm thinking, oh, so your children are not here, I will not manage them. but he didn't think that I would get that kind of thing. So he said, no, 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 no. Then he came and looked at me, interviewed me, and asked me who my parents were. Then I told him, and he said, okay, retired child, okay, okay. Then he moved on. Then a former Katikiro, Paulo Kavuma, who was my father's friend as well, came. His was to see this new girl they've given their school. You know, this is a Buganda school, so this is their school, personal order. So he got into my office because I knew him before. He didn't know me that much. I knelt down, I greeted him. Can you imagine headmistress kneeling for the parent who has come into the office? But anyway, I knelt down, I greeted him, and then he said, oh, you are the new headmistress. I said, yes, I am. Oh, who are you? Who are your parents? I said, my father was your friend, James Rutaya Kaganda. Oh, these people have been making us go through a lot. I moved on. You know, I just moved on at that point. I said, there is the retire in the background, I'll do it.
That's a very interesting endorsement from people, I think, and again, tying in and making a loose connection to what goes round does come round. That whatever your father did, managed to light the way for your work, even just using that name to open those doors of affirmation that you were the right person for the role. Just a quick one here, reading something from Grace Shemere, who was unable to come. For those who've seen the flyer that went out, Grace and Shemere Waku was supposed to moderate this session. Unfortunately, she's had an emergency at work. She lost a work colleague, and she has had to go to attend to that and be part of the ceremonies to say goodbye to this work colleague. And she's put a message that Akusa has obviously shared a little bit about, but I just want to go to the end of that message, which is, she says, I want to commend you for not stigmatizing that girl, the one who got pregnant when we were there, for giving that little girl a chance to finish her O-levels, for not shaming her, for saying that it is okay. You were ahead of your time, and that's what we would love to see headmistresses do for pregnant little girls. Given the Christian setting, the involvement of the church. Okay, so we talked about that. So it's really her commending you for having taken a step and being a different type of leader of the school when such an incident, which wouldn't have been an easy incident, happened. I've got a question for you, Mrs. Kavuma. Would you say that your leading in the school, your teaching, your approach to leadership, headmistress or teaching, evolved as your children went through the different stages? Were you looking perhaps certain decisions you made when they were younger would have been different in how you approached your teaching to when you started to see that the girls you were teaching were about the same age as your own children? Would you say that your teaching style or headmistress style evolved as you saw your own children go through the same stages?
Yeah, I think you are very right. As I went through the stages, when they were much younger, when they were babies and I was teaching, I think I wasn't as sensitive, if I may say, as sensitive as I was when, like, they started school and they were growing older. I mean, for example, in a maths class, if the girls did not understand maths, I was, I would be mad. But as I realized that I had some who could do maths and some who couldn't, I came up and said, hey, okay, yeah, there are some who will and some who will not. And remember, I had boys, and the boys always felt I gave them as an example in class. And I would say, even my son can actually do that. And they were feeling, sure. Why do you give us as an example? But there's a very big contribution to when I started, when they were babies, they were just growing, they're just growing. And when now we came to PAP, with them being at certain schools and me being here, I had to learn a lot because then I knew how to deal with the parents, the other side, the teachers, my children's teachers. I knew I was now dealing with them as a parent. So when a parent came to me, I would know, or when the child sort of misbehaved, then I would know, children misbehave. Now I have to really think a little bit deeper in how I make this decision. I think that was a very, very big blessing I got to have been in Gayaza at that time when they were growing up and even when they were joining school.
Okay, thank you. So we've got a few comments from the chat, which I'll read out. From Beverly Nambozo, warm greetings, everyone. Thank you, Mrs. Kavuma. Thanks from Marietta again. Thanks to Mrs. K for having been empathetic towards that girl who got pregnant as she was waiting to sit her exams. Motherhood as you lead. Another one from Medina Bumba. This is an important lesson of empathy and valuing individual opportunities that need to be applied widely across various institutions in Uganda, more so after the challenges of COVID. Then Julie Mwesiga, we applaud and appreciate you, Mrs. Kavuma. My young sister is a beneficiary of FAWE. We had lost our mother when I was in my first year at university. Left with nothing, I wrote to FAWE and they covered my sister's school fees from S1 to S4. God bless you and the ladies behind FAWE. And then we've got Grace Nanyonga. Thank you for picking me up from the roadside. Fish girl, have you ever talked about the scarcity of sugar as a child? I think that might mean something to you. Eve N, we deeply appreciate you, Mrs. Kavuma. Can't believe you were only 35 when you took leadership at the mighty GHS. Thank you. And then Sheila Baingana, wonderful contribution. Eve N, I know that at times when we acted silly, you made us sing a hymn with the words, Dear Lord and Father of mankind, forgive our foolish ways, restore us in our rightful mind. ETC, God bless you always. Okay, and then I'll take this one and then I'll have Akusa come in for another question. It says from George Martin Geria, thank you, Honorable Mrs. Ruth Kavuma, for being a perfect fit for GHS at that time. I love the different episodes of your life story. Can someone consider capturing her interviews into a book? It is very key because she was the first Ugandan African headmistress of GHS. This is George Martin Geria, who was a former teacher. And then Pam A, thank you, we appreciate. So any reflections on what's been said, Mrs. Kavuma, before we go to Akusa? She's got a question to put to you.
Well, I would like to thank everybody for their comments. Mr. Geria, at that time, I'm sure most what I know from the teachers, they felt I was a bit too hard on the teachers and a little softer on the students. So I really thank you for making that comment because I think I really had to do that. The students had the parents as well. The teachers only had themselves. So, of course, it gave me an opportunity to think I have two on this side and one on this side, so I can now afford to move on and be hard on the teachers. And but the teachers, one of the things I do realize about Gayaza, there was a lot of prayer in my work. The teachers got together and really prayed over almost every step I made. And I knew that, but most of them didn't think that I knew. And they were. the students got themselves in certain groups and said, we need to pray for this school, we need to pray for her. Not only at the beginning, but throughout my time as head, because there were so many ups and downs. Remember, there was that comparison, as Mr. Geria put it. I was the first African. Everybody came and said, you know, at the time, I was also teaching. When I joined, I was teaching with my former teachers. Now, what opened up, of course, my life to get to the top of the school was a very simple PTA representation. We had the Parents Teachers Association, and there had to be a representation at the PTA. And I think it had just started in Gayaza, and a bit, parents, we are difficult. So every teacher they asked to do it refused. My friend, teacher, mentor, Miss Queen, who used to teach maths, who actually picked me up maths in senior 5, they said, Ruth, you are the Muganda woman here. Those parents, most of them are Baganda, you are the only one who will manage them. Go and be the PTA, please. So I went, not knowing that was exposing me. So I worked with the parents. When the situation came that Mrs. Kasente went for further studies, I had worked with the parents. So that then the proposal came that I should be the acting deputy. Later on, be confirmed as deputy. Now this, I'm sure people are going to ask me how sort of like my journey, did I plan for it? There's so much as you listen to it. That is not my planning, if I may call it that. When I joined in December, when I joined Gayaza as a teacher, in December, Mr. Wafula, now pastor, retired. He was the head of physics and more or less the only one. He retired and went to do, I think, full-time pastoral work. And then I became head of department for the physics department. I mean, I had only done 6 months. And that opened up more and more in administration and confidence. The people had confidence in me. But then also, there was nobody else. You know, there are situations when you land there, when they can't look around and find a person. In that particular case with Pastor Wafula, there was nobody else except me. And then I carried it on. And when Mrs. Kasente left and I became deputy head, it was also like quite a number of people approached their feeling, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. But then the parents around me whom I had worked with, you know, like Bishop Kavuma, they said, oh, you take it on. So then I took it on. Mrs. Mpanga, who would always just say, Ruth, you know, your father made me a teacher. So now you be there. You make sure that you do it. She would give me talks on how to do what. Very, very, you know, I have my mentors. And I really feel, Mrs. Mpanga, Bishop Kavuma, my mother in her quiet way, you know, very quiet and calm at the message would come through. Yeah, Sophie, yes. So, you know, to everybody, most of this is an inspiration. So many people prayed for those situations where we are saying, oh, she's going to be mad. No, they prayed for the situations and then I wasn't mad. But don't forget the fact that if I may tell you, I still had my hole in my heart. So, and of course, nobody knew about it until when I went to England and became unconscious, and then they had to take me for surgery to close the hole. I had already had my children. I was already a teacher and deputy and being prepared to take over Gayaza. And all those were situations that came in time for me to move and to work.
Okay, thank you for that. We're long past the halfway point, but anyone who joined us as we've been talking, we're Pals of Wisdom, talking to Honorable Ruth Nvumetta Kavuma, and talking about the parent-child cycle. And obviously, that relationship circle. Obviously, we have to explore a lot about the person themselves before they can tell us what it is that they really want us to get from this. So over to you, Akusa. You've got some questions for Mrs. Kavuma.
Yes. Thank you, Sophie. So, and actually, it's just tying in perfectly with what you've just been speaking about, Mrs. Kavuma, how you've taken on these roles, but it wasn't quite planned. You know, with our generation, we're told to strategize, build, have a plan, 5-year plan. Where are you going? Go to school to reinforce that. And for some of us, it has worked. For me, I'll tell you, that was my strategy. I had a plan. I wanted to do something. I needed to study to get to that point. But also, we learned a lot from Gayaza, which was you needed to stand up and be counted. When an opportunity presented itself, you just had to make yourself available to do that. And we've seen from your personal story, indeed, you were stepping into shoes with confidence. So my question is, after Gayaza, you then went into the political realm. This is something that is quite scary to most people, especially now. But you were phenomenal. I mean, getting through your elections, holding those positions, and the changes that you made, the voice that you heard in Parliament. And the question is, what inspired you? Who mentored you? How did you find yourself in this position and the choices you made?
Number one, my actually moving on into politics was, I think I've done enough in Gayaza. Nobody's giving me any more advice on anything. I don't think I'm making any, any more impression on the system. I've done this, and I was feeling tired. I said, no, I think I've done enough. I need to move on. Now, of course, the situation opens up and there is this politics, soft landing. And then there was also a threat that for the head teachers who have been head for 10 years, they would be transferred. I looked at the transfer and I said, Ruth, I'm not going to be taken to Budo, no. I'm not going to be taken, I'm thinking of course, classy schools. They will not take me to Nabisosa, they will not take me to these schools, classy schools. Now they are going to transfer me to a school which I don't know, and I wish I had taken the opportunity to go to those schools, because now I can see a lot can be done there and you feel really happy, but still that didn't happen. So for that fear of being transferred and then opening, and the work I had done with Fawe, looking at all these girls, and it also helped me a lot to go back to Sese Islands, to look at the communities in the islands with another eye. Remember, when I was staying in the islands, I was the chief's daughter, up there. Now, when I went back with Fawe, I realized, no, this is not the same. So I went back, and an opportunity was there. At that time, when I joined Parliament, we did not have to resign our jobs. So I said, let me try. If I fail, I'll come back and be a head teacher. Or if they transfer me somewhere else. What is interesting, as luck would have it, I went in, the person who was there decided to say, she's coming, let me step aside. So we did not have big conflict. So I went through the elections, interesting elections where people who still remembered my father as a chief in Sese Islands. And, as I introduced myself, Omusajja oyo no yatukuba emiggo nga tetulimye emmwanyi, you know that. Naye yatukola bulungi, twagagawala, you know that kind of thing. And I really had my first elections still on my father's name. My parents' name, you know, he had made a name, and it was there, and they said, yes, she will do it. And, you know, it wasn't so tough, I must confess. It's tough. There's no competition that is not tough, but it wasn't very bad. So I went in for the first, you know, the first round. I went in with expectations. I thought I was going to move the world. Almost everything I had seen that was going wrong, I knew I was going to put right. Mama, no way. Then I had the bad Gayaza attitude of you don't just say anything for the sake of saying it. I then realized that no, in Parliament you have to say anything for the sake of saying it, and that kept me back. And that, I think, was more or less the reason why I said, if I do a second term, that will be it. Because I just don't understand what is going on around me. It's not that they were wrong, but the speed, it wasn't me. Before my dad actually passed on, he had told us that we should not get involved in politics because he had been put in prison more or less because of politics. So he said, politics is, no. Now here I am, I'm stepping in and I'm thinking, I don't say, told us. I was, with all honesty, enjoying the pomp, the money, the what, but still not being very satisfied. My background was, at the end of the year, I'm going to be asked, how many girls have done this? You know, now nobody's asking me at the end of the year how many times I have been, you know, in Parliament, what I have said, and, you know, has anything changed as you wanted it to change? So I said, no, I'm going to do 2 terms, and that will be that. And I did 10 years, and that was that. It was interesting. I enjoyed it because, of course, I learned a lot from the whole of Uganda because of the opportunities as a member of Parliament, meeting the people from different areas and also visiting and, you know, going for meetings and so on in different areas. That also opened me up a lot about Uganda and what we need. But as for real contribution, I'm still feeling whether I did. I'm here in Sese Islands, and the people are saying, oh, you did this for us, or you are good. I'm like, yes, okay, maybe. Oh, that will comfort me for some time. I'm not too sure, but yes, it was a big step, but it was also the fear of being transferred to a place I don't know.
To another place.
Away from Gayaza.
That makes it sound like politics was a plan B, which
was.
To this day and age, it's an expensive plan B, if I may say. But from your experience, what would then make a good politician? Because as you mentioned, in school, you could quantify what you were doing. You could measure at the end of the year, okay, we started in January with this target and we've managed to come to December, and you can measure, you know, what you have done through the year or over the 4 years, you know, with each year that the girls did A-levels or O-levels, you could measure how you were performing based on the year before or even against the country. In politics, it's sort of different because let's say it's Sese Island and you want to make this impact or that impact, or maybe on a committee. So what would you say would make a good politician, given the background, you know, most of the girls, of the ladies who have gone through Gayaza, and we do want to make a change. We do want to impact society. Politics right now it's not easy at all, you know, by any measure. I really applaud those individuals who are willing to put themselves there. But what in your words would you say would make a good politician?
Yes, and if you analyze parliaments I think at that time there were 3 of us from Gayaza. If you analyze the different parliaments, you just go and analyze the different parliaments. It's one of the unfortunate things we have not gotten as Gayaza to get ourselves into politics. It's very unfortunate. During my time, maybe now it's been improved. We never had an opportunity, more or less like to talk about ourselves, to show we are, you know. We lived in a situation where I would be picked. They would see the good in me and I would be picked, you know, that kind of thing. And that doesn't work these days in life, not only in politics, but in life. That's something we never had an opportunity to get. So that's why I tell you, I managed to get up and stand up, and people looked at me as my father, not even as me. And sometimes I would get up and say all the wrong things and tell them, no, you need to have your own latrines. They are yours, you know, those kinds of things. And then my campaign managers would say, hey, they don't tell the people that. Maybe this way, you know. Now there's a choice. Which party should I, you know, join with? And when I do, what contribution am I going to make in the party where I am? There are just too many challenges, but still I would encourage more people who have had the basics to join politics. And that would definitely help a good number of us. And I think because of that, that's why you were seeing the president is also realizing these girls, they won't stand up to talk about themselves, but let me give them jobs. You know, Director KCCA, you know, UNRA, Makerere University Chair Council. Do you know that, you know, all those are old Gayaza girls? Yes. They would not stand up for elections, but they know, I think they are realizing that all those people can make a contribution, though they probably don't have the courage to stand up.
To stand up, So no, and I think you make a very good point. Just even as you mentioned, in Gayaza, unlike other schools, we wouldn't campaign to be a prefect. Your campaign would be a silent one through the years. You know, you're doing the right thing, staying out of trouble, making yourself helpful, and that kind of thing. And you are right. The reality of it is, like, for example, straight away at Makerere, getting into university politics, it's a total switch from, you know, you come from Gayaza where you show that you are a responsible person. And that politics it's 0 to 100, because university politics in any way is absolute aggression and be on top of your game and that kind of thing. And we've had a number of girls come through as, you know, potentials for guild presidents, but many for presidents of Mary Stewart and the other. But it was. Would you think that the system in Gayaza is a disservice to us when it comes to politics in the real world?
Yeah, I think we need to do a little bit more opening up and a little bit more. I think we overprotect in a way, and feel, oh no, that is not right. You know, standing up, and I mean, politics can be bad. You sort of like say things which you shouldn't. One of the things I learned during the training when I was a politician, I was told, make sure you say something, even if, you know, somebody has already said it. It's better for you to say, but as somebody said but, and you add, at least the only difference you have in the whole sentence is the but. And, you know, in Gayaza, everybody would look at you and say, hasn't that been said? And I went, you know, I went through that. And the girls, at the level now, you know, Idinira and all these, if you analyze now that level, I think we are doing very well. We are doing very well because we are being seen. When it comes to actual politics, those who can and are gifted, they should really take up the challenge.
Yeah, and that's the question.
What work very hard at the networks,
yes,
so that we can get into these other positions. I'm a Rotarian. Rotary has done excellent things for me. Networks, I've met so and so, I've met so and so, and I can just say, okay, well, people will say, but they recognize you because you are headmistress of Gayaza. No, even people who had nothing to do with Gayaza, they are Rotarians and they really feel, yes, she's done this, she should be, you know, recognized. When I was president of my club, I think they also worked with me very closely because of my leadership, because then I had come out of parliament, but they worked very close. And we won so many awards during my year as president because we worked together. So I think we just need to tap in and see how to work with people.
Yeah, I think that's something that's very true. We have a modesty built into us as Gayaza girls. We do things silently, and yet politics requires you to be loud and in the face of people. Yeah, and indeed, organizations like Rotary are very essential. I don't know if Joyce Katende is on the call today, but she also became president of her Rotary Club, and it was, you could see, you know, it was something that she had worked very hard on. And myself, I am a lion. I appreciate what the Rotarians do, but
we
yes,
also appreciate what the Lions do, because we work together.
Indeed. So that is one of the things I think maybe we should be more intentional when we're bringing up our girls, to be brave enough to face you know, these challenges and to step up, you know, when the opportunity presents itself, step up, whether or not you succeed. The fact that you've tried and in doing so made it known that you are a potential out there willing to serve in this capacity, that is something. One other question we have on the politics. My mother-in-law was an MP, and I saw firsthand how from 7 in the morning, the bell at the door would be ringing. Her household was set up in a way that she woke up very early, dealt with the homestead, because at 7, she started dealing with the constituents. And we know she had these 2 flasks, half-liter flasks of tea set out on the veranda, which was her consultation room. And from 7 in the morning, she was receiving these people coming in with all issues. How did the politics impact your personal life, your family life, your finances? How did this impact you?
The finances. How did it? One, I think having had to be up at 5 in Gayaza and be ready to get to the girls, that was very good for me, because waking up now for the political people wasn't an issue, because I knew that. But I think I was also a different one, and my friends would actually say that who were with me. I never had people coming to my house when not invited. And I made that very clear. You know, this is my house, this is my space. So my space was never interfered with. Fortunately, of course, the space in Kampala, the people, very few people from Kalangala, from Sese Islands would come to Kampala to take up my space. If anything, they'll probably meet me at Parliament. But even when I went home to Kalangala for the visits, no, only the ones invited, or if I go out for a meeting. I remember one time, I think I escorted my friend to Kayunga, and all the people in Kayunga were, oh, Sarah, oh, our honorable, oh, honorable. I looked at them and thought, how do people manage this kind of thing? And then they came to Sese. And cool, calm and collected. They were like, yes, honorable, yes, honorable. You know, nothing like, I think they knew their space. I had my space.
Yes.
I made it clear. It was a bit hard to tell you the truth. If I had gone back to stand a third time, I don't think I would have made it. I think I was a bit too strict for the politics, as I see politics now.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think politics now requires the whole of you. You can't keep a part of you. It requires the whole of you. And I think that's why it is scary for people, because there is no boundaries. Your life is out there, and everybody feels that once they have given you a vote,
your life.
Exactly. They are part of your life, which can be quite difficult. But finally, on this topic of politics, holding positions of leadership is obviously a very great responsibility. And it is something that, you know, we shouldn't take lightly. However, now it seems more of a monetary thing. Most of the times you read about parliament, it's a debate about their package, their cars, their allowances. It has been far removed from service, and it seems more of a career path. It is a way to make money rather than, you know, giving back. In your view, how can we turn this around? How can we bring back service rather than, you know, being selfish?
But do you also realize, Akusa, that because maybe we didn't give that kind of service, maybe our service was at a level of the national, you know, I would look at our Chidieri and say, let us get this Chidieri, and not, because at the moment, apart from everything, the service they think is, you give me money, me, take my child to university, me, you know, instead of the whole community. And yes, during our time, the service to the whole community was worth it. But let me make you laugh. I gave some books and pens and all that to students. And the parents came and said, you mean those are the ones who are going to vote for you? Okay, you give them. You know, when you are faced with that, what do you do? Yeah. What are you supposed to say? Oh, no, thank you, but no, you can't. You sort of like have to tell them off. But turning ground has to be very slow. By the time we got to this level, it wasn't an overnight thing. We have to participate. We people who are feeling that we can make a difference, we need to participate and know that you may not make it, but the fact that you stood up, you said something, and people were laughing at, I think, Betty Kamia when she was standing as president. You know, but she made an impression on the world.
She did, that she did.
But she went around, she wasn't able to make it. Maybe she got 1 vote and a half or something like that. But, you know, internationally, she made an impression on the world.
Yes. How
many women will step out? She's a Buddha person, so she can afford to step out. The Gayaza girls, we have to think seriously about that kind of activity. But I would encourage as many as can to look at that space and try to filter into, or give advice to the ones who are there.
Yes.
And say, maybe we should do this, try to work with them. It's not easy, but we also had a lot of training. I don't know whether Parliament these days does that training, but we really had a lot of training on what we should do. We had Her Excellency Speciosa Kaziwe, who would call us as women in Parliament and tell us all the bad things that can happen to us when we are in Parliament. Then we would wake up the next morning and find that that bad thing is about to happen to you. So we had a lot of mentoring. And unfortunately, I sometimes feel we who are out are not being given enough opportunity to mentor the ones who are there. basically because we have this problem of parties. The person who is there is not from your party. You want to tell them to correct them, they are sort of like saying, why should I? Or you are also feeling, if I made this step, everybody else will say, I'm mentoring so and so to stay there, and yet you are not of the same party. You know, that kind of thing. It's a challenge. It's a very big challenge.
It is, but I mean, on my part, I appreciate you personally, and I know many others do. I still think you were phenomenal in your role, even though you think you didn't move the pin. I think you really did. And should I choose to go that path, for sure, I will be coming for mentorship and change Busoga for a better place. But I'll hand over to Sophie now.
Thank you, Akusa. I think you actually you undervalue the contribution you're already making to Busoga, Akusa. So
I know.
That said, we'll move on. We've actually had a very good conversation. We have about just over 15 minutes left, and I'd like to open it up to questions. But before we do that, I'll read some messages from the chat. And then I'll also, as I read them, Mrs. Kavuma, if you could just think about, you really wanted to talk to us about that parent-child circle and what it is that we need to be mindful of as parents handling our children. So as I read through the messages, I'll just let you have a few moments to collect your thoughts. And so it says here, okay, Marietta, I enjoyed GHS for the time you were head. I felt like home. It felt like home while I was there. Your decision towards politics changed my view about teaching. It confirmed to me that teachers are a real resource wherever they are. I am a teacher now and feel proud of my abilities. Then Madina Nachibidike, great job, Mrs. Kavuma. Lots of lessons that you were always available to take the right step. Moreover, there are always giants in life on whose shoulders you have to lean on. Madina Bumba, politics today is volatile in Uganda and very monetary. Edna Banya, oh, hello, Edna, long time. Mrs. Kavuma, you have just said something very pertinent. We get into rooms and expect to be picked based on merit, but this is not how the world works. The famous saying, nice girls finish last, is really not a myth. Not everyone on a platform is the best at what they do. They just made the most noise about what they do. Rachel Namale, thank you, Mrs. Ruth Kavuma, for sharing your story and experience. Hamida, thank you for this enlightening talk. Gayaza taught us to speak what we can do and achieve. Thus, Gayaza girls can never do well in politics. So speaking about what you can do. Mrs. Kavuma, this is from Eve N. Mrs. Kavuma, you're so right. I see so many deans, CEOs, heads of department, etc. are Gayaza girls chosen on merit, not campaigns. And again from Hamida, the one thing that we would like to instill in future Gayaza girls is to be more aggressive and be go-getters. We tend to rely more on opportunities and windows presented to us as opposed to fighting for these positions. Eve and Hamida, that is so true. And then George, Mr. Geria, service above self. I believe I was what Honorable Ruth Kavuma and her likes did, that other politicians need to emulate. Thank you for being real and honest about politics and politicians. And then from Beverly, you're right, Hamida, this is stimulating. Is it possible for Gayaza culture to shift towards being more business oriented, assertive and firm? Barbara Katende, thanks for the inspirational talk, Honorable Ruth. So those are the comments from the chat. So Mrs. Kavuma, over to you. What are your reflections on this parent-child circle? And then for the rest of you listening, prepare your questions. We'll have an opportunity to ask questions in audio as well as text, but it's better if you speak out the questions. So be ready to raise your hands. Mrs. Kavuma.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things I would like to say, Barbara did a lot to help me to exit politics. She prepared me a lot. I told her I don't think I'll go back, Barbara Katende. And she gave me talks and, opened me up and showed me what it meant to exit. And unfortunately, a good number of us never get an opportunity. to know that exit exists. These days, you are lucky you get these lectures where they tell you, once you get into a job loss tomorrow, you will leave it. We never got that. But I definitely would like to thank Barbara for that. I think as parents, the circle, the biggest circle is, let us listen to them. Let us listen to the parents. There are few people who actually felt nti abana bange mbakole ekyejo. Nedda. I think we need to listen. Our parents were very strict, my mother and my father, but they still listened. You know, they would say, you bring the cane, you get the cane, especially my dad beat you, but then still listen to you, to what you had to say. One time when I said on Somesawa history, Tanjagala, he said, how? You know, who are you? How can you? Omsomesa is Msomesa already. You are just in senior 3. What is it? So of course I get that, I got the cane, but he also listened and went and talked to the teacher and said, you know, my daughter feels like this. What is it? Let us, you know, have that open. And we need to try to be very, very close, not spoiling, but very close, and take the fact that each child is different. We should not want to say because so and so is left-handed, all my children will be left-handed, or you know, or something like that. No, we need to know that each child is different. My 2 boys,
Thank you very much. Oh, she's back. Sophia, you're back?
Yes, I am. Sorry, I'm having a few challenges with my machine on this side. So I missed it.
I am on the road right now. Otherwise, there's so much I would have loved to comment and to say. Let me just finish by saying that I thank Mrs. Kavuma very much. That while she was headmistress, I happened to be a deputy head girl. And as deputy head girl, we got a chance, the head girl and myself often had a chance to have breakfast with with the head mistress in order to discuss how the school was going to be run. And on one of those occasions, we were trying to figure out how to deal with a problem that had come into the school where children would bring cooked food and then keep it for long and then end up having food poisoning. I remember that I gave Mrs. Kavuma, I mentioned in passing something that led to a decision being made, and so some children were sent home. Some children were sent home, or rather suspended, because we had realized that the reason that food was there in the first place was because it's the parents themselves who had brought it for the what? For the children. And at that time, it created backlash for me from a number of people who I thought were my friends, because they said, you just gave us into the headmistress and we ended up getting suspended. But the long and short is that it taught me to take responsibility for the things that I do, and knowing that the long-term impact of what I have to, of what I have, the decisions that I have to make, being in a position of leadership. So I'm very thankful for that at the time. And I also must say that I can't believe that at that time you were only in your maybe 30s or 40s, which is the years that we're in right now, it just makes it that much more inspiring for us. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Sanyu.
Thank you, Sanyu. Anyone with questions? Again, if anyone joining us for the first time on this session, we are on our 10th Pearl of Wisdom, which is the year crowning session. We've been going at this for more than a year, where we invite people who've gone ahead of us in life and listen in on their life's wisdoms with the hope that we can pick a leaf or two, or pick a pearl or two, pun intended, a pearl or two to take with us. So any questions, do raise your hands. But as you raise your hands, I've got one question that came in from our year group. Mrs. Kavuma, when we were in, which year were we in? When I forget which year we were in, but there was a sit-down strike. And again, some of the things that, some decisions you were making in school. And we had a sit-down strike, and I guess you remember what we're talking about. And for the Gayaza girls at the time, this was the biggest thing that we had ever done, to decide to effectively oppose authority. And just one person stood up when he walked into assembly, and the rest of us remained seated in the chapel pews. How did that feel? And how did you feel for you as a leader?
That actually was a great shock. I didn't expect it at all. Though somehow some people thought I had gotten wind of it, and honestly I hadn't. So when I walked in, but very quickly, there's quite always a lot of guidance. And I told you, the teachers and students were always there in prayer for me. Because when I got in, I said, okay, these have decided, unless I answer, they actually said, unless Mrs. Kavuma, you answer, those 10, I think there were 10, we are not going to continue in school. So I thought, what am I going to do? Luckily, we had a program on, how do we handle assembly? And normally, of course, it was the hymn, what, and the prayers, and then we go through announcements. So, guidance told me, why don't you go through, the program as it is supposed to be? And then in the meantime, cool down and see what can be done about, this situation. So when I told the students that we have a program, you have your issues, and the issues normally come at the end. So why don't we wait? Why don't we go through the prayers, etc., and then we will discuss these issues. So, of course, in the meantime, we are going through the prayers and everything, and I'm reading through the 10 points and getting answers for them. Now, most of the 10 points, the answers were supposed to come from the students. So, number one, we had push over 3 times last week. Over the food was late, something like that. So I said, now where are your dining room representatives? Dining room representatives, get up. What did you do about this? Why? So that now the dining room representatives, remember they are part of the group, started feeling like her toward me. Then, that, and then I said, but Mr. Maduka, did you tell her about this? And they all were like, we haven't. And some others, and some of course were about the teachers are not happy. The teachers, remember, we're sitting at the back. So I did say, teacher, up also hit her. You know, they realized that, hey, so she won't be moved. Because I'm sure some of them walked out thinking, ha, and there is a parent who told me that their child thought I would send them out of the school. But, you know, by God's grace, I thought, no, why? They put across things I needed to know. So those are things I needed to know, and I did. And actually, interestingly enough, some of the teachers came and apologized and said, we knew about it, but we couldn't tell you. Said, well, it's okay. It all went well.
Thank you very much. The challenges of leadership and situations, and I think one of the things I think about when I think of Gayaza and the fact that it raised us to be such ladies that even sitting down, I've mentioned this to people, that our strike was simply sitting down, and they think they didn't think of it. How do you think a sit down is a big thing? But for us, it was a big thing. And
the punishment tree, you know, other teachers always say punishment tree, and that hurts, you know, other heads. And we said, yes, it does. It works.
It certainly does. So we've come to the end of the allocated 2 hours. If anyone's got a burning last comment or question that they would like to put to Mrs. Kavuma, now is your chance. I'll just use the couple of a minute or two to go through the last. Okay, Grace Nyangoma, Nanyonga, please unmute and say something. We'll take the two, Grace and from Livia, and then we'll end the session. Grace?
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Grace. I'm in my garden, plantation garden, this side of Chiti Gayaza. And thank you so much for organizing this session. I've always thought I knew Mrs. Kavuma, and I knew her very well. There's a lot I have learned about her. And actually, I didn't know that her father was in prison when she was a child. All this time I wondered why she has passion for children she doesn't know. For me, she picked me up from the roadside where I used to roast chicken. And now I have my own, we didn't have a home, she gave me a home. But now I even have 2 homes that I've constructed myself. I have gardens, I've supported my siblings. Because of her energy, she tells you that it means if you don't save, you'll never be rich. And saving is in different ways. But I have a question for her. Mami, what is this energy that made you even relocate, for example, from Chanja to Kalangala, and you're actually happy there, and we are happy for you there, and it is well. Some of us are clinged. You know, my home in Mukono, and then I have another one in Chiti, and I'm like, I'm attached to them, and also attached to children. Oh, my children, this, my children, that. But for you, you're there, you're comfortable, and somehow you're moving slowly away from children. Where do you get this energy? What is the driving factor behind? Thank you very much.
Grace, the children are no longer children. They all have their families. It is them who should be very close to me, should be looking for me. But Grace, thank you very much for that. You are a child who never went through Gayaza, but through Gayaza by osmosis. And I really thank God for that relationship. I have an unwritten rule. 10 years, move on. 10 years, move on. 10 years, move on. I have a house in Chanja. I've been in my Chanja house for 10, 11-ish years, and move on. Move on, go home, go to Sese. I think that is the kind of thing I have. You know, 10 years move on is something that automatically moves me. And when I managed to come to retire early, another thing, people, retire from this big sense of working day and night for others as early as you can. Because retirement, when you are too old to connect with different people and different things, is not enjoyable. Retirement is hard. You know, you lose more people, you lose more networks. You are in that position because you are somebody, because you are in that position. It's the position, not you. The minute you leave it, people shed off. So many opportunities shed off. So my advice is early retirement when you still can. And I think because I retired early, I've managed to be able to move on when I'm still strong.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mrs. Kavuma. We're a little over the 12 o'clock mark. Are you okay to go and take a couple more questions, or is this?
Yeah, I'm fine if we still have space.
Okay, I think we do it. If anyone would like to drop off, you're more than welcome to drop off. You can catch the recording on YouTube on Tuesday, but we'll carry on because this is a conversation that we'll not get a chance to replicate. So we're trying to get as many of those pals as possible. So Livia, over to you.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you to the PALS team for setting this up. Just like Grace mentioned, I've also learned so much about Mrs. Kavuma that I didn't know. I think because we were very young, we just looked at her as a headmistress and thought she had not gone through any difficulty, or her life was very easy and we were the ones suffering, or that was our thought process.
Yes, that's cool.
But she has talked about 10 years and moving on. Actually, my question was about that. You mentioned that Barbara Katende helped you. You had a session with her, you had several talks. So what was that transition like? Because I feel like most of us are at that stage where these thoughts come, but we just brush them off. What was it like for you to say it's time to move on? Now we know you're in the tourism industry. What was the process like and how are you finding it? And maybe you can tell us a bit about your resorts and we can know more about it so that we can visit.
Yeah, I think like moving on from being headmistress, that's obvious. You know, I moved into politics, get soft landing. After 10 years in politics, as I told you, I felt I wasn't making any progress and I moved on. You know, that's still a 10-year phase. Barbara was giving inspirational talks on retirement, the exit. I think she called it the exit. And I took it up because in my heart, I felt, no, I'm not going back. So what am I going to do? And one of the things she said is, be sure you are going to have less money. You are in politics, you have money coming in. But once you go out, once you exit, you won't have that much money. So prepare for a life when you don't have that much money. Prepare for a life when you don't get called to the front when you go for a function. Because now you are no longer MP, you will get in and sit there and nobody will look up and say, And one thing I also learned as a teacher headmistress, once the child left the school, the parent would say hello when you meet, but not hello over a phone for nothing. You know, I learned that while I had the child in my hands, I mattered a lot. When the child has gone, yeah, you matter because you made an impact on my child. But you're not the priority. Today, my other priority is something else. So, you know, Barbara went through all this and realizing and waking me up to the fact that you won't have the same amount of money. So you need to plan and know what to do. Of course, it has been hard, but also I've been lucky that I have been given, and the networks in Fawe and so on, but I've also been given responsibility like being vice chair of the NIRA board. You know, that brings in some money, but it may not be money, but it brings in a lot of network and keeps my brain working, what am I going to do in this situation? So at least the brain is alert. I'm also the district chairperson, the district service chairperson at Kalangala district. That is the commission that gives jobs, interviews, gives jobs, supposed to discipline and that kind of thing. That one is a very hard one, even as harder than the Gayaza days. But that also has kept me going. There's actually no money, but at least I'm relevant. I'm relevant in society. And we also need to learn that being relevant is not only about money, but it's also very important to have money and plan for yourself while you are still working. How am I going to get passive? I think Barbara calls it passive income. So of course, during the time I was a member of parliament, I built rentals. So that became, passive income where I have, I tell people I'm not very good at business, but I'm good at giving business ideas, as Grace would tell you. I lead people to where business would be. But for me to do it, I don't. My tourism part, people are saying now everybody you bring in, you bring in for free. When are you going to get money? Say, next time, no, never mind. Oh, next time people come, I'll charge them. Then I end up finding that they're either my friends or we've had time to talk on my veranda. And why should I ask them for money? So my business knowledge is very limited. I know what I would like people to do in business, but I'm quite limited. But I know I will definitely make it. In tourism, I have a passion for Sese Islands. I really do have a passion, as my parents did. They really had a passion for Sese Islands. So I think that was the other reason why I came back and tried to make sure that things work out for us here in the islands.
Thank you, Livia, for that question. Over to person signed as Shefam. Please unmute and ask your question. And as he or she does that, I think Mrs. Kavuma, anyone from Sese, once they're from Sese, they're always from Sese. Wherever they are, they have this passion for the islands, wherever I've met them. So that's something that you all have. So Shefam, please unmute.
Thank you so much, Livia. My name is Alice, and I'm not an old girl of Gayaza, but I happen to be in our community. We have some old girls who shared this on the group I'm on. And my daughter is here. She's so passionate about Gayaza. She put her first choice. She finished P7 PLE, but they've been telling her, Gayaza, if you either get a 4 or not, as in she dreams about Gayaza. She has got things about Gayaza. She doesn't even want to know where I studied from. Her passion is Gayaza. So when I saw this group, I was like, let's get her, let's come here and listen in so that maybe she will get encouraged. And yes, so that's how we managed to come here. But what discouraged her a bit, she's been performing well. She's from Hillside Nursery and Primary School. She's been performing well. She's been getting outgate 4 in P7. But they told her Hillside, all the children put Gayaza, so the chances of you getting Gayaza are almost negligible because all of you are going to pass. So it's not going to be easy for you to get a school. So you make sure you get some money, go with at least some 2 million in your pocket, so that in case she does not get a place, even after getting an aggregate 4, you have to put some chikonde and give to the current administration for your daughter to be there. So I told them, but I trust your brains. For us, we are going to believe God that you're going to pass because you've done your best, you've been performing well. We don't believe in corruption. So what is your advice to me as a mother and to her, the Gayaza diehard?
I feel very disappointed when we get to that money bit. Of course, even when I was headmistress, I was eating people's money. I mean, there's no question about it. But then the people themselves testify. You sort of ask them, who do we give it to, or who has actually given out money? And they don't have an answer. So that actually disappoints me a lot. And to the person who is passionate at being at Gayaza, please be there. You will make it. You know, this is your life. It is not everybody. When it comes to, but everybody will pass. Hey, so what? It is you who did your exams. You will also pass. And you definitely will make it. To the Gayaza girls, I think we also need to improve on our advocacy for that school. I think sometimes we overpraise it. Well, it's very nice to praise it, but I think sometimes we artificially put in our children that this is a life and it's a matter of life and death when you are not there. I'll give you an example. My own classmate, her daughter came to Gayaza, and after I think 2 weeks, she said, this is not the school my mother has always been talking about. I think at that time we had a TV, when we had a black and white TV in the dining room where we used to watch news, I think in the evening when we were students or something like that. And now this time the TV wasn't even there in Gayaza when she joined. There was so much, we praised Gayaza to all our children and society and how best it is the one to go to. And then you get a few disappointed with what they find there. They realize that it's not, you know, as she said, no, I want to go home. After all, my sisters are busy watching TV at this time and I can't watch it. I mean, very, very naughty young children things. But anyway, we managed to go through school with her because, you know, I personally got to her and had to be talking to her and even asking. And as you know, in Gayaza, the elections are funny elections. So of course, I gave her a responsibility through, you know, some kind of election, and she felt, yeah, now I'm somebody because I'm so and so. And that helped her to go through school. In Gayaza, this I didn't sort of say, because we were being picked to be leaders. Some girls who did not make it to A level, for example, would complain, I didn't make it, I have no. But you know, in most cases, the schools they went to, they became the leaders. Now, all the Gayaza girls to start off are leaders. You know, they are all very good in almost everything. So now to pick a leader, you have to pick a leader. Now, when they went to other schools, they were the ones. So they were picked as leaders and actually performed very well because they had been picked as leaders. So I think people also need to relax and know that there are other places where we can make an impact, though the best is Gayaza.
Thank you. We'll take this final comment or question from Navaego, and I'll read the text. Let me read the text before we come to Navaego. So we've had a whole series come through. Wow, that wisdom is surely, I don't know what those emojis stand for. And this is from someone that has a very, very long name. Can't make it out. Then Josephine Galiwango, Mrs. Kavuma, I will always remember your talk of the earlier you learn that all people are not equal, the better. It had to do with the complaints from students of some parents were being let into school and others being sent away. It taught me never to compare myself with others, and it has been very helpful in leadership. I can never be like anyone else. Beatrice Geria, Mrs. Geria, you're very welcome. Thank you very much, Honorable Ruth Kavuma. Listening to you always teaches and inspires me a lot. You really are a great lady. Irene Bess, thank you so much, Mrs. Kavuma, for your investment in us and for you sharing your story. As always, many thanks to the organizers. Mr. Geria, thank you. It was inspiring, full of memories, quite nostalgic. Josephine Galiwango again, I learned to celebrate other people's successes and I know my own successes will come. There is no competition. And this is, I think, Alice who signed in as Shefam. I have a burning question for Mrs. Kavuma, which you've picked up. Then Bayego, Mrs. Kavuma telling us about sorry, please, thank you. Nuggets in life has struck me with, have stuck with me through life. Thanks, Jajja Ruth. Take your flowers wholesomely whilst you're still here. That's Bayego. Esther Katende, we need to bring you back, Mrs. Kavuma, for a session too. We need to hear more from her. God willing, we'll bring her back. Marietta, it's not true that you pay money to get a place there. Just that little needs to excel. Okay, thank you so much. So over to Bayego. We'll take that. That will be our final one and we'll wrap up. It's been a very good session. So Bayego, over to you.
Thanks, Sophia. I hope you can hear me. I'm just recovering from a bit of a bad cold, so
yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, thank you. So I just wanted to kind of like expound on what I call her Jajja Ruth because to my kids she's Jajja Ruth, Auntie Ruth, Jajja Ruth. Thank you for having her on this panel. I literally like just jumped on because time difference. I was like, I've just seen this. But I'm glad that I managed to cut the end of it. Now, I just wanted to expound on what she said of the advocacy bit as far as Gayaza is concerned. Because for me, this is something that, people tend to forget that times have changed. And when she said that, one thing that struck me is it took me back to, remember we were her first S1 after the Muzungu head teachers had left. And at one point, I don't know if it was in the induction, we had like that session where you meet the headmistress for the first time now. Remember, we're coming to a school that has had white headmistresses the whole way around, and she's the first one. We were literally, I remember, I believe, I stand to be corrected, but I think we were her first S1 class as head teacher. And one thing she said is, there's going to be changes. I'm standing before you here as the first Black headmistress in this school. So you have to adjust your expectations to what I am able to do for you, not what the people previously have been doing. And for me, when she says that, prepare your children for what they will find, not for what has been there, not for what you have experienced in the school. I think that is the first hiccup or the first hurdle people come when people get to Gayaza and complain. But then also us as old girls, we need to take the rose-tinted glasses off and face reality, the reality of life in boarding school, the reality of life in boarding school now. In as much as you will want your child to go to boarding school, the first question you need to ask yourself is, have you prepared them for that? And I think people tend to think that when you bring your child to Gayaza, yes, it is a very good school, but times have changed. Mentalities have changed. Systems are different. Infrastructure, as much as we had it all, we were fewer, there are now more. All that has changed. So we need to not reduce the pressure, yes, keep the expectations, but then also be real with it. And then also us as old girls, in as much as we might have the advocacy, maybe fatigue, if I could call it that, we need to put action with our, people, Gayaza girls come up time and again and we all go Gayaza Oye. Let your Gayaza Oye be proactive. Do not just say, yes, Gayaza, oh yeah, yes, I went to Gayaza. What are you doing to support? I mean, as alumni, we need to be more proactive. Yes, we will get tired of hearing help the school, support the school, but you have no idea how strong alumni associations literally support schools. We need to look inward and also be able to proactively support our schools to get better, because we have to realize that the government does not do that anymore. The church does not have the facilities to do that anymore. If you want your child to go to the school, then also as an old girl, do something about that. Support the schools. Like be proactive with your Gayaza Oye. And that is, for me, I believe that is the only way we can keep that school shining. Yes, people will say, oh, Gayaza, wajitendereza nnyo, but it's not all that. It is us who have to make it all that, because we have gotten all that from it. So let's put our all that where we got our all that back. But also, most importantly, a vote of, like a note of thanks for Mrs. Kavuma. She has been there in some of our lives. She's still there. In some of our lives, she's still there, but she has been there each step of the way. If you get a problem, do not shy away from the fact that, yes, she was your headmistress. Reach out to her. As she said, her networks are strong. Trust me. I will give an example of my ID, national ID. I was literally afraid of even doing it because of all the stories. But she just said one thing like this. She said, go to Enid Roma. Enid was still at Mira at that time. And trust me, I did not even need to struggle with all that documentation and all that paperwork and all that. So we need to strengthen our networks, even with these people that are much older than us. Do not be afraid. Keep the link going. Keep the spirit alive. And yeah, thank you very much, Mrs. Kavuma. But most of all, thank you, Sophie and team. As a request was given, I think at some point, maybe in the new year, she will come back and give us more stories, because trust me, there's many more there. Thank you very much, and have a good Christmas, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bayego. Sophie, Bayego said something about it is me, it is not the other person. And I think that also helped me a lot. You know, during Miss Warren's time, assemblies, she would read a book for us. I mean, she was reading the book in Haluganda because it was in English. English for me, a little bit of a struggle. It's a second one. It's, you know, it's good, but it is there. So I could not read these books. And as I said, she actually at one time even had to take me through lessons, reading lessons when I was about to take over. Because, you know, there are things that I didn't know. I skip words. I skip letters when I'm reading. It's a handicap, you know, which I had at birth. Fortunately, managed to outgrow it and make it in life. But that skipping of reading words and so it was bad. So fortunately, I decided assemblies, instead of reading books, girls, go and do the news. You come and bring us the news. What have you found? And I found that very interesting when the girls were reading the news. They were very, very, very interesting what they found, you know, from the dining room. Now this is on national, at national level, and they had bothered to listen to the radio and heard what was going on at national level, at international. You know, it was football, even when we didn't know that they knew anything about football, somehow they would bring it and, you know, then we get to know, oh, somehow they get these messages, that kind of thing. I think the other thing is we need to know what we can do and what we cannot do. We should not force ourselves. I knew very well I could not read. That is not my gift. Get a way of filling in that space. Unfortunately, when I filled in the space, it worked.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kavuma. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been an inspiring session, as it's been mentioned on the chat, and I think it's given me personally, it's given me an opportunity to get to see the person behind the name. As Bayego mentioned, when you're headmistress and we're students, we look at this really big figure out there that is old and experienced and whatever it is. And we're at a stage now where we're going through some of those things that you went through, and actually looking back and realizing you were very brave for some of the things that you did at that age, which is an age we were in and even past. So it's been beautiful just reconciling these two images, the image that we have of a head teacher to the person that you really are and the things that you've done. Some of the things that that we've picked up, some of the powers that you've shared, allow me to mention them, is around education. When we look at the education of the child, is to look at the child, study the situation and how they would cope in society, and listen to the child. Whereas it's good to be strict, you also have to listen to the child. And then it brings it back to also thinking about what is said to the child, what we say to the children, because it will come back. In many cases, it is a prophecy. So make it a good prophecy, more or less, is what I've taken from that. What you say always will come back. So let it be a good prophecy that you make about your child. And around advocacy for the school, being real and realistic for what we say about the school, and also we should know what we can do and what we cannot. Where we recognize the things we cannot do is to identify what we can do and focus on that. And that's how you've been able to make a contribution to wherever you've gone in education, in Fawe, and as a member of parliament and as a mentor to many people. So if there's anything that I've missed, Mrs. Kavuma, please have a final moment, a final word.
No, my final moment is actually to just say thank you for inviting me to this. I'm very camera shy and very shy, I think, talking about myself and that kind of thing. This is the first time anybody has asked me to do something like this, and I said I'll do it. So many people have wanted me on TV for whatever, talk about yourself, you know this, and I've refused. And this is basically because, of course, I knew there won't be 1,000 people out there. But then there is the YouTube, but still I won't be facing them direct. But thank you so much. And Sophie, I don't know whether you remember one time after assembly, you came up to me and said, you didn't look very happy today. What is it? And I said, no, I'm going through a lot. You know, you just walked up to me and said, Mrs. Kavuma, you didn't look very happy today. What is it? I thought, yeah. I think I told some other head teachers, and for them, they actually thought, it wasn't. To me, I realized there are people who care, you know, who care. It's not only that I'm their headmistress and whatever, but out there, other people also care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I absolutely have no recollection of that moment, but thank you for that. So thank you again, Mrs. Kavuma, for joining us. Thank you a great deal to the team that organizes PALS. So Akusa, Livia, Claire, and Sanyu doing a great job behind the scenes. Anyone who missed this or has a friend that missed this will be putting it on YouTube, 8 p.m. on Tuesday. And do listen out for our next guest. As we said, it's a monthly session. We'll be announcing our next guest for January. But for now, thank you very much, everyone. Have a good Christmas break. Enjoy the festivities and see you next year.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Do enjoy yourselves. And may God bless you.
Very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Kavuma. Merry Christmas. Enjoy your break.
Merry
and see you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Very soon.
Merry Christmas.
Do come and visit, Sese, please.
We shall, for sure.